Well, welcome everybody. We are so excited to have you join us for today's webinar, Addressing Addiction in North Dakota with First Lady Kathryn Burgum. This webinar is part of a free monthly learning series that is presented by Dakota Medical Foundation, Level Up Fargo, and the Maddo Foundation. Together, we are working to delay, decrease, and defeat substance abuse and addiction. So whether if you're a parent, a leader, a coach, a mentor, or a caring adult, this series is for you. And be sure to follow us across our multiple channels on social for upcoming webinar announcements. And so today, again, I'm so excited to introduce First Lady Kathryn Burgum. As First Lady of North Dakota, Kathryn's priority is supporting and developing initiatives to eliminate the shame and stigma of the chronic disease of addiction in North Dakota communities. In long-term recovery for 19 years, she shares her personal experience and encourages others to do the same to normalize the conversations around the disease of addiction. Kathryn earned her undergraduate degrees in retail business at Arizona State University and a master's of business and administration degree in human resources from the University of North Texas. Over her life, Kathryn has donated her time and leadership to many charitable endeavors, including at-risk women and children, animal welfare, visionary artists and the arts, and addiction and recovery. Kathryn enjoys reading, fishing, horses, snowboarding, and is an avid college football fan. And we couldn't be more excited to have her with us. First Lady Kathryn Burgum, welcome to this webinar.
Hey, Scott. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here today. And I have to add one more thing. I'm also a huge fan of the Milwaukee Bucks. Yay! They won last night. Wow, our team. We're so excited. Yay!
Well, and what an outstanding series that it was. Well, Kathryn, you have been such a powerful force on normalizing addiction. And part of that is, you've been so bold to share your personal story and to use that for this platform. For those of you that haven't had the chance to hear you before, can you tell us a bit about your personal story?
Sure, Scott. Well, again, I just want to say, thank you for that really kind introduction and really for all the transformative work that you do through the Impact Foundation and Dakota Medical Foundation to support and encourage positive change in the great state of North Dakota. Much of the advocacy work that we do through Recovery Reinvented would not be possible really at all if not for the amazing support that we have gotten through Dakota Medical Foundation since the beginning in 2017. And so we are so grateful to you and your entire team for being a critical part of our journey. And I'd also like to thank everybody who's joining us online for the webinar, because, when you take the time to engage in the conversations that we're going to have today around addiction and recovery, you're willing, I guess it shows that you're willing and interested and engaged around these issues, and that you want to be an active participant in the changes that we're trying to make around eliminating the stigma of addiction and, which actually, prevents people from reaching out for help. So when I became First Lady of North Dakota 4 years ago, I announced right away that I was going to, that my platform and my initiative was going to be around eliminating the shame and stigma of the disease of addiction. And I think, a lot of people were kind of confused by that. Like, why would I choose that topic? And it wasn't until my first newspaper interview when I revealed, the reason why, the reporter looked at me and said, addiction. That's an interesting topic for a First Lady. Why are you so passionate about this? And I took a deep breath and get emotional thinking about it. But I just kept thinking I'm doing this for the right reasons, and maybe I can help others. And I just said, well, I'm passionate about it because it affects me personally. And at that time, I had been in recovery from alcohol addiction for over 15 years. In that moment, it felt like 100-pound weight had been lifted off my shoulders. My struggles with addiction and the joys of recovery had really been a secret from everyone other than my friends and family. Before I publicly stood up as a person in recovery, I really had lived those 15 years with some shame and, in silence, wondering if I would ever have the opportunity to really talk about this huge part of my life. So today, I'm grateful to be sharing on this webinar that I'm now a person with over 19 years of recovery, and I'm so grateful for that. And wherever I go across the state and across the country, I always maintain the belief that storytelling ends stigma. Stories create connection. They help us understand that we're not alone and encourages all of us to reach out for help. So, I model this uh, by sharing my own story. And so my story started in high school when I first started drinking. And I started drinking as a way to cope with my anxiety and social pressures and depression that I faced in high school. I first experienced my first blackout in high school, and then that led to a long road of 22 years of blackouts, embarrassing drunken episodes, and hopelessness. I battled through a cycle of relapse for over 8 years. And, I was finally able to find sustained recovery when I was completely willing to do whatever it would take to stay sober. And I also had the courage to reach out for help from someone I worked with, of all things. This team leader was compassionate and understanding and very, very supportive of of my recovery journey. And really, I don't think I would be able to be where I am today, sharing publicly my story, if not for that support, which launched me really on my road to recovery. Um, and this journey that I'm on has really been the groundwork for the movement in North Dakota that we call Recovery Reinvented, where advocates, providers, and providers in the trenches and our state's behavioral health team and leaders in government all work together to create supportive cultures around recovery and end the stigma that surrounds addiction. Through Recovery Reinvented, we've held 4 annual events that bring together state and national addiction experts to talk about solutions. And we reach thousands of people across the state, the nation, and the world. Last year, with the pandemic, we held this event completely virtually, and we had people from many different countries logging in. So it was so exciting to see that. So, finally, we continually work to empower people to reach out for help and connect to resources. And for young people especially, this can be so, so important. And at the end of the day, stigma continues to be one of the single most challenging barriers to seeking help and finding recovery. So everything I do in my work as First Lady and the team, my awesome team that I have that helps me with Recovery Reinvented and all the initiatives that we work on through the First Lady's office is focused around reducing the social barriers that prevent people from reaching out for help. And we also let people know that there are resources available. And we definitely understand that addiction is a disease and it is not a moral failing. So that's, I would say that, my journey has taken me to where I am now, and I'm so grateful. I learned gratitude in my recovery journey, and I get so emotional about gratitude because I really didn't know gratitude before I found recovery. I was kind of a victim of everything. Everything was everybody else's fault. And once I learned that, people make mistakes, and we've got to own our mistakes, and we got to say I'm sorry when you're sorry, and practice forgiveness, and all these things that that for me kind of prevented me from staying sober. And so I'm so grateful to be where I am today and to be joining you today.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And also, what comes to mind is so many points of bravery on that timeline. When you decided to find your way to getting help, to sharing your story publicly, then deciding to turn that into a platform for Recovery Reinvented. It's really inspirational. And, I can't think of a better formula for finding meaning and purpose than to overcome a major challenge and then turn around and help as many other people overcome that same challenge. So with Recovery Reinvented and your
Well,
your
thank
work,
you.
Kathryn, what are some of the things that help to normalize this, and what can we do? What's preventing people from reaching out to help, and how do we start to diminish this stigma surrounding it?
Right. Well, really one of the best, most effective ways to normalize the conversation, to normalize the conversations around addiction is very simple, actually. We just have to keep talking about it. How addiction has impacted all of our lives, or the people we know, or the people we know that are struggling. We need to talk about addiction like we talk about any other disease, like diabetes or heart disease, because it is a disease. It's a brain disease. And I learned very on in my own experiences that sharing my story was a very liberating thing. And it helped encourage other people to reach out for help. It also helped other people encourage the people they knew that were struggling to reach out for help. On the national stage related to the opioid and addiction crisis, any conference that I participate in as a thought leader is one where I encourage people to share their stories, because sharing stories is really the way to change the hearts and minds of people, which is really the most important things. It gives people a voice, those people that have been misunderstood, like me, for so long, because we struggle with addiction, and people have a lot of preconceived notions about people that have addiction. And so stories are a very, very powerful tool to create a shared understanding, eliminate shame and stigma. And it helps people realize that they are not alone, and there's a massive community of people around that can help with supporting other people. The other way that we normalize conversation around addiction is to empower youth to become part of the solution. Addiction does not discriminate. It remains one of the most inclusive diseases that affects or impacts almost everyone. So adults should understand that these conversations should not be kept from youth. Youth should be a part of the conversations. But there are lots of tools and resources that are available to help with tough conversations around these topics of substance use. We should be actively challenging youth to come up with solutions, challenging them in whatever groups they're a part of, whether it's sports or schools or, any type of team activity. We can challenge youth to be a part of the solution. And in 2019, my team really helped create this idea of how do we get youth involved? How can we get youth involved across the state related to ending the shame and stigma of addiction? And they came up with this incredible idea called the Youth Ending Stigma Challenge, or the Yes Challenge as we know of it today. And the program was designed to position young leaders across the state to create their own initiatives and and projects that would eliminate stigma surrounding the disease of addiction and mental illness in their schools and communities. And through the generous support of Dakota Medical Foundation, thank you very much, we were able to grant 17 high school groups throughout North Dakota $1,000 each to fund their initiative. And because of this challenge, students were able to lead community fairs, have dialogues in their communities, build resource websites for their peers, and make videos that inspired and educated people around these issues. One of the videos that was created, whoops, got my little thing falling out here, was a very cool video that was created by a group in Grand Forks that I was able to actually share with the Surgeon General of the United States at the time, and he was super impressed with that. And so these people that the thing that it really did was it really helped people in all of those schools. Actually, all the schools across North Dakota learned about it. And at a minimum, it got people talking about it. It got young people talking about it. Even if they didn't participate in the challenge, they were talking about it, and which maybe helped people realize they need to reach out for help. And now we have more behavioral health resources in schools, which was not available when I was young. Maybe I wouldn't have started drinking to deal with all these, behavioral health issues if I would have had those resources. So I would encourage all young people to reach out to whoever they have in their schools. But these this conversation they're able to have in schools created, hopefully safe spaces for young people to have conversations. So that program has sort of ended, but again, it's an opportunity for adults who are working with young people to create these challenges. Like, what can we do to help people? What can we do to how can we work together to help young people? And recently, because of this youth ending stigma challenge, I met these amazing people, young people across the state, and I had someone reach out to me because their young an adult, their young person was struggling with behavioral health, mental health issues, and I was able to connect that person with someone who participated in the youth ending stigma challenge, because they just probably need to talk to each other to work through some of these issues. Peers supporting peers. It's an incredible way to help young people that are really struggling with these issues. So, normalizing the conversation, getting youth involved, storytelling is all part of how we can help eliminate the stigma of addiction. One of my really good friends and mentors, he's a guy that I heard him speak before I became First Lady. And he said one of the best ways we can eliminate stigma is just by talking about it. So that helps normalize the conversation. What he also said, we really need to celebrate the successes of people that are in recovery, that are doing well. And so, one of the other things that I've been doing through my talks is asking, I sort of feel like I need to walk the talk, right? So I give a talk at Amazon Web Services in DC, or I give a talk here in North Dakota, the Chamber of Commerce event. And I tell my story and I say how important it is to talk about this disease, to normalize the conversation. And then I realized at one point that I actually need to ask people to, to be a face and voice of recovery, for us to normalize this disease, and talk about it like everything else. We want people to be able to feel good about that wherever they are, that, that they are, if they're in recovery, if they're currently getting help or whatever. So I asked people at these events to stand if they were in recovery, at Amazon Web Services event and at the Chamber event. And people, you could have heard a pin drop, let me tell you, when I was like, hey, I'd like for you to join me if you're in recovery. And nobody stood, it was very quiet. And then all of a sudden, people started standing up. And it was like, oh, people were clapping and cheering. And, it was like, oh, people who had never had talked about it at work, it's like, oh, it was just, oh, so emotional and so powerful. And so, that is just one way, if we can normalize this, have it be a part of our life, have it be a part of our work life, that's just the one way that we can really work hard on eliminating the stigma of addiction. But that was, oh my gosh, that was amazing. We also do the same thing at Recovery Reinvented. This event we ask people to stand if they're in recovery, and we ask them to, tell us, by how many years. And so whether someone has a day or a year or 50 years, people with 50 years are standing up at these events. Again, we're celebrating their success and their recovery, and they're a face and voice of recovery, helping to, sort of get rid of those preconceived ideas of what people in recovery look like. So those are some of the ways that we normalize the conversation around the disease of addiction. And, I'm happy to be a part of it. And thank you for asking, like, how do we normalize that? Because it's simple. Just talk about it. And if you can, be a face and voice of recovery.
Well, and you can see your efforts already taking hold in our state and beyond, because more people are talking about it and talking about it comfortably. And, I think, one of the things that your initiative has really helped to do too is that, just like heart disease or diabetes, everyone knows somebody that is in recovery or is suffering with addiction. And it's not talked about normal. It hasn't been normal to discuss this. And, you mentioned in your personal story too, that, when you start to bury things, or, you get in a default position of life of that this is overwhelming, that's normal and is not said very often. And that, this idea of storytelling and working together and connecting, can really move us towards a better life as individuals and as a community. So, as your work continues to unfold, particularly in our state, one issue that we have that's quite large is binge drinking. So, specifically, what are some of your thoughts or concepts of what we can do to change the culture around binge drinking in our state?
Yeah, we are sadly known as, the number one binge drinking state in the nation sometimes, which is really not. We want to be known as a great place to come and visit. And, we are on the list of great places to live and do business. And we definitely don't want to be on the binge drinking list. And, I think there's education is a key component of this, because when young people are in junior high, high school, they there sort of gets to be this feeling that everybody's drinking, well, everybody's doing it, so I should do it too, or it's peer pressure or that sort of thing. But what the truth is that, if a young person drinks before they're 15, they're 4 times more likely to develop a substance use disorder later in life. So the longer that young people can delay that, the longer they can, delay until their brain is fully developed, because that's what happens. Your brain gets affected. And, we're not really fully developed. Our brains aren't until we're like 25 years old, but, at least waiting till 21, at least waiting till, you can get, your brain, to a better place. That's good. But, the other thing is that, I have some really interesting statistics about young people and drinking. And middle schoolers, some of the data that I have. So middle schoolers, the number of North Dakota middle schoolers who ever drank alcohol has dropped from 28% to 22% since 2001. And high school use has dropped actually massively since 1995, from 60% to 28%. So, those numbers are going down because I think there is more awareness. There is more out there about how dangerous it is for young people to use substances before the age of 15. I do know some people who have goals, like they say to their kids, hey, if you don't drink, don't use substances, in high school or to a certain age, then we'll take a trip. We'll go to your favorite place. We'll go to Disneyland. We'll go wherever. Having goals, I think, is a good thing. Having whatever that is something that is important to that young person. I think that's a good thing. But the education is very important. And if parents also. So here's the other thing that is super important. Kids model parents. And parents really have this opportunity to be the person that their children think, are the role model. And the role model is, that alcohol, our life doesn't revolve around alcohol. It revolves around family activities and that sort of thing. Having parents be good role models, and that is really important as well. So I think that we have some really good programs in North Dakota. Like, changing the culture in North Dakota is really important too. Through the state of North Dakota, through our behavioral health team, we have these amazing programs, and one of them is called Parents Lead. And Parents Lead is very cool because you can go to the website, the behavioralhealth.nd.gov website, to find these programs. But they help parents talk about all kinds of difficult conversations, whether it's substance use, whether it's things like, sexting or bullying, or, whatever they want to talk about. There's a lot of great resources available through this Parents Lead program. So I really encourage parents to do that. But doing all of these things will help impact, whether we are a binge drinking state or not. We just need to, there's a lot more things to do now in the wintertime than drink. I think people are like, oh, there's nothing else to do. Well, there's a lot to do, come downtown. Now we've got an ice skating rink downtown. We've got, there's just there's so many different activities happening. The Kindle Market probably is going to happen this year. There's a lot of great family activities. So, those are some of the, I guess, the ways I believe we can change the binge drinking culture in our state.
Well, those are incredibly helpful. And for everybody watching now and in the recording, we'll put the link to Parents Lead in the chat and with the post of this video. And, I think it's really powerful to draw out, that, what is your family centering around? And specifically, speaking to parents and coaches and helping to go to Parents League and lead and making sure that we center the activities of our families and our groups around healthy activities and making those center. And talking about this, I think it's also very important, this idea that we now know information we didn't have before, which is that, using substances at a younger age will affect brain development. We had this same thing in our country with smoking. And once we got more and more educated, we saw the rates go down. And it's so inspiring to hear that the rates in our state are already dropping, which means that this is working, pushing up to talk about these things that we normally would conceal or maybe be embarrassed about, or being talked about in a healthy manner. And we're building communities across the state that are working together to center around healthy activities. And so this is, just again, incredibly inspiring to see that we're on the march to make a difference. And I wonder, Kathryn, if you think about somebody, younger that is going through what you are going through, what do you want them to know and their family?
Yeah, right. What I would say is that, again, there are so many great resources available through schools now. But even so, just reach out to a friend, just talk about, you never know, that friend may be, struggling with the same things that you are struggling with. It's having the courage to reach out is really the first step. And sometimes, for me, it's like, we hold these things in, and then when we actually talk to somebody about it, we realize they're not as big of a deal as we thought they were. Just sharing it and sort of talking through things sometimes just really helps. So, I would say that I think, parents just checking in with your kids too, and developing that kind of relationship where I know a family that they sort of said mental health matters. Mental health is the most important thing. Like from the minute the kids were young until, now their whole life, they're like, mental health is the priority in our house. So they created this culture and space where kids just could talk about things very easily. I'm not, I'm feeling sad. I think I'm depressed. I have anxiety. They're just able to talk about it. So it was very clear that you could not fly under the radar, not talk about those kinds of things in that home. So parents creating that, and I think it's challenging because, I'm Scandinavian, basically Viking, and we didn't sit around the dinner table and share our feelings, Scandinavian, runs rampant in our state. And so it is a little bit, but I do believe too, older generations, had different mentors, in their parents. Now younger people have, parents that are, more exposed to education, learning more about how important it is to have conversations with your kids. So, I think that that's one of the things that's, very important, is just creating a culture where it's a very safe place at home to talk about things. And then, also that, young people can reach out to other people. One of the other things I wanted to mention is we have a kind of really a program in our state that's getting national recognition, and it's called, hashtag not in my house campaign. Because I think sometimes parents think, well, if I let my kids drink in my house, that's a safe place for them, and at least they're drinking at home. And again, of course, you don't want kids drinking before the age of 15 for sure, because they're 4 times, but even if, later in life, so the brain can develop. But, there's all kinds of legal consequences for parents who decide to do those things. So there's more information about that as well on the behavioral health website. Be sure and just post the behavioral health website also, that includes parents lead. But so I would say that is, one way to, a couple things going on there where you can, especially for reaching out for help for young people, is just, have the courage to do that, have the courage to reach out to the people that are in your schools, whether it's a resource officer or it's a behavioral health specialist or a friend or a teacher, just reach out.
Well, and by you sharing your personal story and helping to pioneer these initiatives, it gives us an example of what this courage looks like. And it's so true. Once you share, you realize how many other people are also dealing with this. And, it's not as stressful as we all thought it was. And as a parent, this idea of not in my house and going to parents lead is really helpful, because, you also said, kids will model the behavior in the home. And so, there is something we can do about that. We can take ownership of the culture that we create in our home, like the example you gave of even at the home, making mental health a priority. These are things that each of us watching right now, whether if you're a parent, a coach, a concerned friend, whatever role that you have, this is really the fabric of humanity, just saying, let's share our stories together, let's create a safe space, and let's take ownership, to live healthy and productive lives the best that we can. We're not victims here. We can stand up and we can do something about this as we face the challenges of life. In Recovery Reinvented, I do, as we start to move towards the closer of this interview, I do want anybody to know they can post a question for First Lady Kathryn Burgum if you're joining us for the live, and we'll pose that to her. But Kathryn, could you lay out too, in addition to parents and not in my house, just some of the things that you want everybody to be aware of about Recovery Reinvented and its efforts?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for bringing that up. Oh, it's such a cool thing. When I first got into office, I, was trying to figure out, or into this role, I was trying to figure out, again, well, okay, now we know the platform is eliminating the stigma of addiction, but how do we reach a lot of people and how do we help a lot of people? And Pam Sagnis, who's the director of our behavioral health team, and my mentor, William Moyers, who's actually with Hazel and Betty Ford, we all got together and they were like, the best way to do this is really through a conference, bringing experts together, bringing people together. So that's how it started, how Recovery Reinvented started. And so through the years, we have brought in national experts, and, the theme changes kind of depending on what we feel like we need in our state. And so this year, Recovery Reinvented is going to happen in October, October 25th. I want you to be sure and save the date. I am so excited because it's going to be a great day. It's October 25th and it's in Bismarck, and it's in person. We can be there in person this year, which is great, but we will live stream it also, but that's going to be fantastic. And so I would say that, the cool thing about, well, every year is cool, but this year, and last year a little bit too, we decided that, we wanted to, the big group component of the audience are people that are already connected in some way to the disease of addiction or substance use, and or people that are in recovery or working on their own recovery, or know somebody who's struggling. But we decided that one, group that we should spend more time focusing on is kind of the business world, because, it's people that either are struggling or know somebody who's struggling make up a majority of the workforce. And so creating cultures that are supportive, that are recovery supportive, is really important. And so we have information about that we were focused on last year. We will again this year. We have speakers that are fairly well known in North Dakota speaking, and then we'll have experts. We always bring in people that know the science of this disease, because really the overall umbrella of the conference is focusing on eliminating the stigma of addiction. So we will, you know, we've had scientists every year. This year we have the CEO of Hazel and Betty Ford, Dr. Joe Lee, who will be joining us. And we're going to be putting out information about speakers. I'm doing a little bit, my team's probably like, you know, didn't know you were going to talk about that. But so we're, you know, a little bit of a preview there, but we'll be putting out more information. But we want you to save the date for October 25th. It will be all day. You can go to recoveryreinvented.com to register. Its registration's not open yet, but we will have, follow us on social media, follow my First Lady social media on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and you can learn more about those events and a lot of other events that we do as well. So, and we also so we do a couple of other things. We love to have volunteers. So it would be great if anybody who would like to volunteer could, you can sign up at Recovery Reinvented. We also, love for people to submit videos, short videos of their story of recovery, someone they know, you know, any way that their life has been impacted by recovery or even mental illness. We love people to submit those videos. And then we also give awards during Recovery Reinvented. We give awards to people and groups that are, you know, doing really good work across our state, helping people in this arena. And so we ask people to submit names of people they think should win an award. So all of those things can happen at recoveryreinvented.com. And we also, you know, we bring in the youth component. We talk about how the disease of addiction affects youth. So anyway, we encourage everybody. It's also very fun because usually we have music. We have, you know, it's very different than your typical conference because we like to focus on some of the arts and make it, you know, kind of a happy space too, to celebrate recovery, but also do some really good learning about what we can all do to help eliminate the stigma of addiction.
Well, we'll be sure to post the links to that, and you know, what a marvelous thing to get involved with. I mean, the event is like a snapshot of what Recovery Reinvented is doing every single day, and it's coming together to take a view of not just naming the challenge, but celebrating all of the successes, connecting with one another, you know, helping each other, distributing resources, having, you know, the joy of celebration with awards, and also, you know, distributing all of these resources as we continue to knit together in relationships to end the stigma around addiction and to become happier, healthier people in this state and beyond. Well, First Lady Kathryn Burgum, we've got a question. You know, can you speak a little bit to the role of peer supports in addiction, and then also how our state is delivering peer support in both the eastern part and western part of our state?
Yes, I can. Boy, peer support is really the holy grail for us in North Dakota. That's what I call it because, you know, 50% of our state is rural. And we're never going to have all the resources in every small town across North Dakota to help people that struggle with mental illness and the disease of addiction and substance use. So peer support is people with lived experience. These are people that have had their own substance use issues and mental illness struggles, and they've lived through that experience. They're in recovery, and they are people that can help others that are struggling, trying to get back on their feet. They can help people find a job. They can help them get their driver's license back, find a place to live, you know, and really just be a coach and someone that can help them as you navigate your life once you start the road to recovery, helping you stay out of the criminal justice system, you know, helping you just get your life back together. You know, people get reconnected with their families, with their kids, but the peer supports, so we have over 400 trained across our state now. And they offer classes, which again, you can find out more information about that at a behavioral health website to become a peer support specialist. But they're located in pretty much, well, in every big town we have. I'm sure there are some in the small towns as well, but this is really a game changer in our state. Again, because we just we're never going to have all the treatment centers. You know, we we are trying to do our best to have a lot of telehealth services, but sometimes you just kind of need that one-on-one with someone who has that lived experience. So it's a great thing in our state, and I'm so grateful that so many people want to do this work. Because, when you're new in recovery, when I was new in recovery, I was like, okay, maybe I want to be a licensed addiction counselor. You want to give back, you want to help, you want to immerse your life in helping others. Because for me, I realized that's also one way that I keep my own recovery, that I stay on, because when I work with people and people reach out to me, it really helps me to stay sober. So that's what people that are new in recovery want to do. Peer support specialists are also now covered under Medicaid in our state. And because we're covered under Medicaid, that means the bigger insurance companies like Blue Cross and Blue Shield and others will start to cover this under insurance too. So it gives people that have this lived experience a career opportunity, because it's really challenging for people, especially if you have been in the criminal justice system. It's really hard to find jobs and careers, and unfortunately people just get stigmatized, and we gotta do better at that too, to give people a chance who have got, found recovery. But anyway, so I'm super excited about that for people that with lived experience to actually have that opportunity as a peer support specialist, to have this as a career.
Well, yeah, and it sounds like, I mean, from the effectiveness of the program and now insurance starting to offer coverage for it, I think, the intent of the question here is, will that continue to grow and reach,
Mhm.
everywhere in our state that it's needed? And certainly seems like it's on track to do that. Well, Kathryn, this has been just a wonderful conversation, and we appreciate so much your, again, these points of boldness where you've shared your story and helped to ignite this initiative to, end the stigma around addiction that's helping so many people. In addition to what we've shared here and the resources that we've covered, is there anything else you'd like our viewers to hear today?
I just challenge all of you. Actually, I'll end with a challenge. You can help. You can all participate in helping other people and helping to eliminate the stigma of addiction by just talking about it. You can be saving a life. Literally, if you talk about how addiction has impacted your life, or if you're in recovery, or you have a son or a daughter or a brother or sister or a parent who's struggling, just talk about it. Because, when you have that conversation, somebody might overhear you and say, boy, I'm struggling. I really need some help. And boy, it's so great to hear you have that conversation. And I don't know that I would have reached out for help if I hadn't heard you talking about it. So again, that'll help. So my challenge is talk to 3 people this week. Talk to any 3 people. Just tell people how addiction, recovery, substance use has affected your life. And you will be literally saving lives by doing that.
Well, First Lady Kathryn Burgum, you are absolute inspiration with what you've provided here today and with your lived story. I think all of us that have had the fortunate, time with you today are all leaving better, more informed, and with a practical pathway to help to end the stigma of addiction. This really, you've given us a lot of hope because addiction does touch everybody personally, either directly or through a family member or through a friend. And because of you and the efforts at Recovery Reinvented, we're now talking about this and helping one another to live the lives that we were meant to live. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
Well, thank you, Scott. And really, we are so grateful for DMF, for your partnership and your support of our efforts. And we are here to help you guys with anything you need. And I especially am truly grateful for your support of the Youth Ending Stigma Challenge, because with your help, we got so many kids across the state and young people talking about things that are bothering them, mental illness, substance use. And so we are so grateful to DMF and, and to all of you and your team for all the support you give us. Thank you so much.
Well, the honor is ours to be able to link arms with you to do something about something that's so pervasive And it is past time for all of us to join together and follow the steps you've laid out for us to end the stigma around addiction. So, First Lady Kathryn Burgum, thank you so much for joining us and all of your tremendous efforts. Everyone, we also want to thank you for joining us today, and as a very special thank you to First Lady Kathryn Burgum for sharing how she's addressing addiction in North Dakota through Recovery Reinvented, and the role we can all play to end the shame and stigma that surrounds this issue. So join us right here for our next live stream on mentally preparing kids for school. That's going to be August 18th at noon. We'll post the information along with this live video and the recording. And we'll be joined with a Fargo Public Schools counselor, Cassie Larson, and she's going to share how we can prepare kids emotionally and mentally for the new school year. So you want to miss this? Bring your questions. We'll have a great discussion. Thank you all for joining, and we look forward to seeing you next time.